Hey, what's up? I'm Joel Madden, and this is Artist Friendly. On this episode, I'm talking with writer, musician, lead singer, guitarist, and frontman for the band Coheed and Cambria, Claudio Sanchez. Let's go.
I don't want no bad times. I don't want to have bad.
Welcome. That's great. Where are you guys playing?
Oh, we're playing Riverside Auditorium tonight.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's a big venue.
Yeah. This year we did it's like the longest run we've done in such a long time, but it was primarily support. We were out with Primus and Incubus.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we did like Primus in the top of the spring, and then that finished, and we jumped on and we did like support with Incubus and, little one-offs here and there. And
That's great.
so, yeah, it was cool. It was cool. We haven't done that in a long time. We don't really get that opportunity that often to support. So when they come, I love it. So we try to jump on them
Yeah, it's great. It's fun sometimes when you find the right match. Like a band you like, so you're excited to be there.
Right.
But also their crowd is cool, and they're cool.
Yeah.
Like Incubus is one of my, I had Brandon and Mikey on this show.
Oh, cool.
They're just cool dudes, but the band, it's timeless. It's interesting because I feel like Coheed is like, you guys are one of the few bands I think that could go and play with Incubus, just like Incubus. I don't know where you guys exist on the timeline.
Right.
There's some classic
Right.
elements to Coheed and Cambria. There's like something very classic about it.
Right.
But there's also something about it that is, because it feels like it's like this, it's always been this kind of progressive. There's no kind of like walls to what you guys could do. It could exist now. If it was a band that came out right now, we'd never heard you before, we'd still resonate,
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's not time stamped.
I'm
me.
into that. That's beautiful. I love that.
It's dope.
Yeah.
It's a great accomplishment.
When I just think a lot of it just has to do with like just being as open-minded as coming up and just loving music and drawing from so many influences. I remember as a kid, the band that this was before Coheed, like we did all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
Like it was funky. It was odd. We were an outlier even then. And I never, as much as I loved all the music that I'd listened to and found inspiration in artists and whatever have you, I never just wanted to be one thing. I liked so much stuff. And I wanted that to be part of the outlet, just try all sorts of things. And Coheed is, it's allowed me to do that, and it's awesome. I love it. I love that that you say that, and yeah, we can go out with like bands like Incubus or even Primus, for example. When that got brought up, I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. There's some things that I do in my guitar playing that, slightly mimic what Les does, and So yeah, I'm into that. I love that.
Cool. It's so cool, man. Maybe you have this experience, but every now and then, do you ever see another band and you go like, you're so lucky?
Like in terms of like what?
Like what you get to do is so cool. Like Coheed became Coheed, right? You were just making art and putting it out, but it became what it became. And some of that was absolutely, it's the core product of you guys creating music and then over time touring, making more records. So you build this thing over time, and it's an organic process to that, but there's effort involved, there's hard work involved, but what it becomes to fans is out of your control. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah,
and some of it's in your control because you could say things, or you could do, some people could like blow their own shit up if they really wanted to. Like you could tear it down if you wanted, but like the vibe is generated from you, but then what it becomes sometimes is beyond you because people share and people have opinions of you. And I think what you guys have done is it's just so unique and cool and timeless. And I think of that when I think of Coheed and Cambria. I think timeless. It's interesting. It captures your imagination. It feels free. Feels like you're not beholden to some rules about what you are. I came to terms with like, I only get to be me. That's it.
Right.
I don't get to be anyone else, but I can appreciate when I see someone doing something that looks fun and they get to have an existence that I think is cool. I just go, man, that's fucking cool. You're so lucky.
Oh yeah. I sometimes do feel like we are lucky. I mean, I look at myself. I mean, I think of when we were kids and we were coming up. We played in these scenes like in Woodstock, New York, or in Nyack, New York, and the little local zines that would get put together. They would say things, we were, again, like I said, we were like the outlier, and they would say things like, the band at the time was called like Shibuti. That was like the first incarnation of Coheed. And they would say things like, it was an odd thing to, I mean, you look at me, you don't necessarily think like high singing, right? And like they would say things like, oh, the singer sounds like a Vienna choir boy that got hit in the sack with an aluminum baseball bat, and shit like that. And you're like, wow, people really don't like us, But, with all that like negativity, there seemed to be like this growth of people that were into what we did, and when I look back at it and I see all that we've accomplished and all that we've grown with how odd we can be, because, there's a lot of misconception. You see Coheed and Cambria, you think the comic book band, but it's more than that. It's a very as as much as it feels like it's like riddled in this like science fiction mythology that I've created. It's very, the only reason that's there is because that's the only way I could be honest in the songs.
Yeah, I don't think comic book at all.
Oh, that's awesome.
Except I think it's a cool aspect of the art. I think it's this cool aspect that's honest. You just said it. It's not contrived. You're not overdoing it. It just feels like someone in their bedroom or their garage toiling over something as long as it takes. And then when they're done, they go, hey, check this out. Look what I did. And you see it and you're like, what the fuck, dude? That's cool as shit. Right? Like, so to me, it's like the kid aspect of all of us. Like somewhere in life, we were feeling maybe alone. I don't know. Like I had the same experience in like high school. I didn't have a ton of friends and I felt alone and I had to work a job I hated to support my mom and go and just figure out all these adult problems. And I was around all these kids that looked like they were having a great time. They were like dating and they were doing all this stuff. And I just felt like not a part of this experience.
Yeah.
And then me and my brother like started this band and it gave us something so rich to like think about, to dream about, to aim towards. And like, we didn't know how to play guitar. We didn't know how to do anything.
Yeah.
And we were like these like weird, I don't want to talk it down because I do think there was a lot of really great experience I had growing up the way that I did, as hard as it could have been at some points. Really religious house, really sheltered from, not allowed to digest anything culture wise. So we were sheltered in the way where we didn't know what the cool things were. So then we started sneaking music magazines and like sneaking cassette tapes and like listening to music, and like it was like a secret. And it gave us a world that we felt cool, we felt seen, we felt like we could be somebody, like there was a potential there. And it saved my teenage life. Like it saved from 15 to 18, I would say. Like I could have gone down a lot of other bad roads and found outlets that were not good.
Yeah.
But I was in this little Good Charlotte world where I was like creating this like thing that felt important to me.
Right.
At that age, of course, you probably have the same experience. You start playing shows and you're like, how do we do that? And you start trying to get opportunities and you're not exactly welcome. And like, you don't really fit in. And people make fun of you, and you actually respect them because that's the scene you want to be a part of. Because in your world, that's the only opportunity you have. Go play those shows.
Right.
So I think it's a similar experience for everyone at the beginning of any artistic or imagination endeavor. Is misunderstood, not respected, not taken seriously, feeling like an outsider because you are.
Right.
And having to be resilient and keep doing it because it calls you to do it, I guess, and you can't live without doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. I mean, for me, it's like, it's funny, like when I started playing in bands, I was just a guitar player. I was never like the front man. I never wanted to be a front man necessarily. I didn't think, I liked being in a band because it was a way to communicate with friends and create like problem solve, basically. That's as I look at it now as an adult. I mean, it's like the equivalent of playing like a sport, but yet you had a coach that would like kind of mentor you into doing that, but we didn't. You're just a bunch of guys like, or girls or whoever, would like just trying to figure out like how to make a thing,
how to have harmony.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so for me, like as a guitar player, and when you say being alone, like I remember when my dad got me a 4-track. That was like, that was more important to me than almost like a guitar, because that's when I started to realize that I did have a voice. And not that I wanted to be the singer in a band, but I kind of accidentally became one. And when that happened, it was really hard for me to communicate as the figurehead, like that's why the comics kind of became a thing, because my fear was like, again, like when I talk about writing music or being honest, that was my way of communicating. Cause I don't really talk a whole lot. I don't, as my wife and I, that's like my strongest relationship. I'm pretty much an introvert. So it's like when I really want to get my like life out there, it's in song. But when it became time to be the guy that everyone's looking at, what was really hard for me to like confess, and that's where the concept came from. It just allowed me to be honest. I could sing my life. I could put my life in the songs, but in a way that I wouldn't be judged. And my fear of judgment is because, you're saying when you were brought up, I was brought up, my parents were super supportive, but, we had this like dark secret. My dad was a recovering heroin addict, and that's actually, and it was a really...
and the whole family knew that?
Yeah.
So it was a really like, at a young age, I'm guessing like you see someone going through something hard like that and you only can hope that they'll stay healthy and they'll beat it, right? But as a kid, especially if it's presented as a dark secret, it could be a really shameful feeling.
Absolutely. Right. And we didn't even know. Like that's like the thing is, my dad was a pretty functional, I say that like I look at it like in from who I am now then, and it's like, okay, it's kind of hard to be a functioning drug addict,
right.
but he held it together. I mean, the first record is called Second Stage Turbine Blade. It's named after the part that he worked on in the factory. That he was a heat treat specialist at in Chromalloy, New York, and that is the job. That is the part that he worked on. And it was easy for me to go, you know what? That sounds very science fiction. I'm going to tell my story in the songs the way I need to feel that expression, to feel fulfilled. But I'm going to create this facade of, and the Amory Wars, which is the title of it, is the street I grew up on. I grew up on Amory Drive in upstate New York. It was a commuter town outside of Manhattan. And everything has like its relevance to my life, but it was like easy for me because I didn't want to be like I didn't want people to immediately, because I just immediately felt like, I didn't want people to think that my upbringing was shitty. It wasn't.
Right. Yeah,
it was like,
I agree. I've struggled with sharing aspects of my life, even though we did a lot in our songs and we were very much more literal because I was angry. I was conflicted the whole time because I didn't want anyone to feel bad for me because I thought I had a great life.
Right.
It's weird. I thought I had a great life, but I was angry. So it's weird. I worked on this for many years. I went to therapy and worked on this. I needed to unpack it. I needed to understand what my experience was. And when I hear you say that, I feel it. I get it because like you did it really well. And I almost see a kid who needs to make sense of a very painful idea that this person who you love, who you see as God almost, like the dads are, that's our view of a God, right? It's a metaphor for God. It is. So this is your hero,
right?
If you want to admit it. From a young age until it's broken, right? Like my dad was my hero, even though he was struggling the whole time. He was an alcoholic. He had a lot of problems. He was still my hero, and there was aspects of him that were fucking really great. And I see him in me when I interact with the world every day. I still see little things like that I got from my dad. He's a tough guy, and he was a lifelong alcoholic. It killed him in the end. But it's addiction. And we had a lot of addiction in our family. It was such a dirty idea, drugs, alcohol, shame. There's a lot of shame around it. And as a father, I'm not ashamed of addicts. I feel deeply empathetic for what they're going through. But as a kid, I was ashamed of myself when I drank.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. I was like, there was so much shame around alcohol, drugs, all of it. And there was the religious undertones of it as well. The story I told of my life for a long time was a little bit of a fantasy so that I could live with it. So I told a much more romantic version of the sad story to kind of like paint a picture that I could show people and not be ashamed of myself or my family. And then it was when I came to terms with the sad truth, I could actually own it and integrate it into me and accept it. And yes, it did make me who I am, but I also believe I am who I am despite it.